Hello, good evening, and welcome to The Majority Show, Scotland's #1 anti-nationalist show, broadcast live every Wednesday on YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitter. I'm your host, Mark Devlin, and here tonight with my co-hosts, David Griffiths and Mary Devlin.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
And so tonight, of course, we're all going to be discussing Humza's win in the SNP leadership contest.
Indeed. Tonight I will be asking, did Scotland dodge a bullet when Kate Forbes lost the SNP leadership election?
Oh, edgy stuff.
And I'll be taking a dive into the puddle that is the talent pool in Humza's new cabinet.
Oh, my God.
And as well as that, guys, I will be doing the comments as usual. So please try to keep them short and snappy, because that means I can get as many up on the screen as possible. Thank you.
And, of course, we will have Zoomer of the Week. All that and much more coming up soon. Right, so we're back. Thank you all for coming in. We've got lots of big user numbers, viewer numbers tonight. So hello to you, wherever you are. First, we usually start the show with a thanks to our friends over at UK Union Voice and United Against Separation, where many of you are watching tonight.
And remember, wherever you are, please like, share, comment, tell your friends, extend the reach of the majority at the click of a button.
And we have new T-shirts for sale in the Majority shop. And I believe Mark is going to give us a little tour.
I'm modelling. You can look at this. Beautiful. Abolish Holyrood. And these are available, plus other designs in the Majority shop. Please go to there. One you might be interested in is we have a new Resign Sturgeon T-shirt with Mission Accomplished. And we also have a nice one, ladies' tee here, which is I love Scotland too much to be a nationalist. So please, if you'd like to get one of those, that would be great. A little bit from the sale of each one comes to help the majority. So.
And Mark, before you start, we're really getting people coming in from everywhere tonight. We've got Saudi Arabia, Alicante, Glasgow, Orkney, Halifax. From all over.
Well,
thanks, guys.
Good. Yes, we're growing internationally then, I guess. So a lot of interest, of course, in Scottish politics at the moment. And this is, as I said, this is Scotland's #1 anti-national show. You will only get these perspectives from us, not anywhere else. The mainstream media has been corrupted by nationalist influence and appeasement generally. So straight up, so they really did it. SNP members elected the most incompetent First Minister ever. To paraphrase Tam Dael, Humza Yousaf is a motorway to the end of the SNP with no exit. So let's go to David. Let's give us the vote breakdown.
The vote breakdown was really quite interesting, guys, because if you look at the first round vote totals, and remember everyone got a chance to vote first round and then there was a second preference vote. So at the end of the first round, of the just over 50,000 people who voted, 50,000 SNP members who voted, Humza Yousaf won 24,336, which is 48.2% of the vote. So he finished just short of halfway. Kate Forbes, 2559, which is 40.7%. And Ash Regan, 5599, 11.1%. At this stage, of course, Ash Regan being the last placed candidate was eliminated and her votes were transferred over to the other two candidates as per her voters' instructions. Interestingly, after that, Humza had just enough to get over the line with 52.1%, i.e. 26,032 votes, to Kate Forbes just marginally under 24,000, representing 47.9% of the votes cast. So, summary, what did we learn from this? Well, for a start, more SNP members voted for Forbes and Reagan combined than voted for Humza for a kickoff.
Oh, yes, okay.
Which means 51.8% of SNP members who cast a vote gave their vote to candidates who are very much opposed to the GRR bill, whereas, of course, is a fanatical supporter of it. 48.2%, in other words, of SNP members in the first round voted for the Sturgeon continuity candidates. They want more of the same, obviously. But probably the most interesting statistic is when you realise that of Ash Regan's 5,000 however many votes it was, 30.2% of her voters gave their second preference vote to Humza. Now that's very, very strange, because there's nothing obvious that links an Ash Regan supporter with a Humza Yousaf supporter. So you have to wonder, is this maybe because Kate Forbes blew it a little and in so doing dissuaded Ash Regan voters from giving her their votes?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, in the end, you're looking for, a person who can go against the Tories, and can a tartan Tory like Kate Forbes be that person to lead the party? I think a lot of people balked at that.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure. Mary, any comments on that so far?
I've got Lee Docherty says, evening from Hamilton. This is unbelievable. Didn't the crackpot say he wanted a Republic Scotland?
He did.
Yes, well, that is true. Yes. There was all that thing about he said as a candidate, he said he wasn't going to go to the coronation. Was that right? And they were going to go in all under one brain cell march. Right. And then they decided, of course, now he's signing everything. He'll be signing everything to the King. Thank you, Mr. King. Please let me stay in my position. I don't know. Okay, so you've got a few things here a bit of rant here about Kate Forbes.
Guys, yes.
Well, some of these are about the 20,000 members who didn't even vote. Have you any comment on that, David?
Well, I mean, I think it's got to be either boredom, or I think, to be honest, a lot of the members who didn't vote, to my mind, are just thinking, well, what's the point? We're not going to get any closer to independence. It doesn't really matter to me. But it does show, I mean, the vote split of those who did vote for pretty much half and half one side, and in terms of like woke, pro-GRR, all the rest of it, continuity, and the other side being more socially conservative, certainly as Kate Forbes is, just shows how split the SNP membership is, because we were all saying this 2 weeks ago. No observers could tell what was going to happen, because simply people did not know the breakdown of the SNP membership. And what do we know now? We know it's pretty much split down the middle. So we
know it's broken down as well.
Exactly.
So yes,
Phil Smith is asking, do you think this result has set up an urban versus rural war in the SNP?
Oh, that's a good point.
It's a fascinating point. And I made this point the other day. I think with Kate Forbes, the way that Kate Forbes was treated as very much a rural candidate, with a lot that goes with that in terms of her faith, I think the SNP's grip on some of the more remote rural communities will definitely be shaken a little as a result of this.
Yes, and I saw that Christopher McElhenney was complaining today that it basically didn't, the new cabinet, which we'll go on to in a little while, didn't represent the west of Scotland, didn't represent the Highlands, didn't represent islands or anything like that. It seems to be very Edinburgh focused, and that is going to be an issue going forward. So, David, okay, have your wee rant about it.
I have a little rant about Kate. Now, this is just, I won't mention
Get it out.
I mentioned some of this 2 weeks ago, but let me just, I'll say this. It's my view. It's my view. So did Kate Forbes' early start to the campaign effectively hand victory to Humza Yousaf? I wonder. Because the start of her campaign was disastrous. And of course, as Mark just mentioned, the endless stream of positivity which Kate Forbes is still receiving from pro-UK commentators will not have gone unnoticed by SNP members, I can guarantee you that.
Oh, yes, that's very true.
Exactly. And that's probably why she didn't capture as many second votes as she might have expected from Ash Regan. But let's just have a look at her campaign briefly. I won't dwell on this too much. A lot of anti-nationalist observers are saying, oh, it's such a shame, Kate's been defeated by Humza, isn't it terrible? And we've seen an avalanche of positive pro-Kate soundbites. She's great, she's honest, she understands business, she's a good person, she ran a good campaign, she goes to church. Lovely. But I understand the sentiments, but I disagree with practically every word, genuinely, because as I mentioned in the show 2 weeks ago, she sabotaged her own campaign on day one with, frankly, inflammatory, wholly unnecessary rhetoric on issues such as same-sex marriage and abortions, which she had no need to discuss at all.
No.
Clearly felt she wanted to. Now, it was obvious to me that she thought this is going to aid my campaign if I talk about this stuff. Immediately, it struck her that, oh my God, it's not going to help me at all. So she did an immediate UE and 180 and started trotting out political non-answers when questioning these issues instead. So where's the integrity there? I thought that was highly cynical. And then she chose the head-to-head debate to criticise Humza Yousaf's record in office in very, very harsh terms, much in the style of an apprentice candidate showing out.
Yes. Well, we've got that clip here, so let's have a wee recap.
Very much. Well, Humza, you've had a number of jobs in government. When you were Transport Minister, the trains were never on time. When you were Justice Minister, the police were strained to breaking point. And now, as Health Minister, we've got record high waiting times. What makes you think you can do a better job as First Minister?
Yes. So obviously, that's why she was booted out of the cabinet selection. But anyway, I mean, we'll talk about that strategy a little bit as we come on to the actual cabinet selection part. So obviously, she saying stuff like that is that integrity?
This is the thing. You can say, okay, she's playing it straight, she's being honest. Okay, maybe she is. But then, subsequent to that, she was asked, so if Humza Yousaf gets, or rather, if you win the job, will there be a role for Humza Yousaf in a Kate Forbes cabinet? She said with a big laugh, yeah, but maybe not in health. Okay, that's fine. But you can't now, given that you've played that card, you can't then say, oh, isn't it terrible he's offered me a more lowly position? Well, you were going to offer him a more lowly
exactly.
position.
That's a very good point there.
Indeed. So to me, it was a disappointing campaign she ran. She showed cynicism, as I said. I think she was attempting, as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, I think she was trying to harness the anti-GRR sentiment, which was pervading throughout Scotland, but bizarrely with attacks on modern-day sexual practices. I just thought it was very...
somewhat bizarre. Not even sexual practices, living, cohabiting practices.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, just bizarre, poor judgment, I think. She showed political naivety with her answers, and she showed, frankly, her callousness by publicly displaying her own very extreme positions and expecting nobody would even mind or even notice. So have we lost out by not having Kate Forbes as Prime Minister? Not as far as I'm concerned. I think she's bright. Of course she's bright. She's a clever girl, no doubt. I don't mean to be patronising at all. But is she a capable, learned politician? No, she's not. Would she have been less of an embarrassment in the role than Humza? Absolutely, but then who wouldn't, to be honest? So I'm glad she didn't get the job, frankly. I'm not one of these people who would say, oh, she's the leader in waiting. No, she's not. She's going to chuck it now, I guarantee.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain as well. She's going to, what's the point? I mean, she's got a young child, and I think she said that she wants to go and spend more time with her daughter, I think it is. And it seems she looked pretty happy when she lost.
Yes.
And that was, I think maybe it was a bit bruising for her. I mean, she got a bit of a smile on her face most times, but I mean, I think in the end, though, we have this thing. It's like we've got these three candidates. It showed to some extent just the lack of talent in the party, and the lack of political skills in the party, and the lack of cohesion is actually in the party. So these are all things that have come out and maybe be unrecoverable for many people in there as well. We'll discuss how it will go a little bit further in the show. So I don't know, Kate, it was like the biggest reason, I've said this before, that we wanted Humza to win was because he would keep certain things in the public eye. But Kate, the big problem with Kate is that because so many unionists like her, then there is a danger, and particularly not so much normal unionists, I used to use the word unionists, I don't normally use that, pro-UK people like her, then particularly in the media, then they'd be bumming her up all the time and saying this is great and this is the good nationalism that we've always wanted, and that would have been frankly insufferable.
Absolutely.
So even though media would just be going on and on about how great she was all the time, and now they can't do that. So at least we can move on from that idea as well.
Exactly. And wasn't it so telling to see Stephen Daisley? Always Stephen Daisley gives his unbelievable opinions. So he was saying the other day, oh yes, I might have voted for it. Oh my.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
What was that about?
There's some people say, oh, it's a rhetorical device. I'm like, well, you're a writer. You're supposed to, you take care of your words, right? And any person who has said that, and there's a couple of people who should know better, said perhaps she could make me vote for her. And you're like, really? Because she's got some claim to honesty and integrity, which isn't real, that you would break up the UK because she's the First Minister? It's nuts, absolutely nuts. Okay, we'll be back in a second we're going to talk about Humza's first acts.
Yes.
Okay. Right, okay, so Humza's first act was, first thing he did was to ask for a Section 30 order from Rishi Sunak. I think that, like, can I have a Section 30 order, mate? And Sunak's like, no, mate, we're good. That's it, basically. So I think that's his first failure within seconds, almost.
He said he would ask, and he did. So it's done.
The point is not to ask; the point is to get. Right. So, okay, then he's kept the Greens. We have this new Butte House agreement is in there. I mean, we've got a picture of Lorna Slater and Patrick Harvey with him there, and I mean, a big section of the SNP support just like don't like that very much.
I honestly believe the Greens are absolutely killing Scotland.
Yep.
Right.
I mean, they're killing business one section at a time. They're killing the housing. They're killing cars. They're just going through everything and just ripping it apart. They basically don't believe. They've said outright that they do not believe in economic progress. So if you have a country that doesn't believe, we've got people who are getting policies enacted who don't believe in economic progress.
Yeah.
Then we are screwed.
That's a very good point there, Mary. It's all about, they can't make any claim to making a more prosperous Scotland while the Greens are there, right? Because the Greens will just say...
The Greens don't want it.
They don't want it. Or they want some, pie-in-the-sky green scheme. We'll make wind turbine blades or something like that. China's doing all that stuff. China's making all the money. And, they're doing all the pollution at the same time. Anyway, so they're going to persist with the GRR because of the Greens, and that's an unpopular policy.
Well, hold on, because Humza said that he would pause it.
No, not GRR. That's a deposit scheme. You're thinking.
Oh, right.
Right. No, gender reform.
Gender reform.
Sorry,
Yeah. There's too many G's and R's around. Sorry.
Yes, gender reform, and they're going to continue with this futile Section 35 fight, which is where the UK government has said that the gender reform bill breaches the UK-wide Equalities Act. So basically they're going to, this was our ideal situation, fact, that the Greens would stay in power, all these green policies would be the SNP would have to keep on all these green policies that are hated by ordinary Scots, and they would keep them in the public eye by going to having this futile fight with the UK government. David?
Yep, indeed.
Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that it's clearly what they're going to do. The initial reaction from the SNP figures since Humza Yousaf became First Minister is very telling, because I've listened to several interviews. What's the guy's name? Neil Gray was on Good Morning Scotland yesterday, and it's as if nothing's changed. It was the same with Stuart Hosey on UK Politics Today yesterday. When they were asked any question, what do you think Humza Yousaf will do? Well, he'll try and get a referendum. He's not going to get one, is he? Well, the thing is, we've got a mandate.
No, it's the same rubbish as before.
Exactly. There's nothing. There is clearly no new strategy. Nothing.
No. Well, that was one of the things I was going to come on to, actually. That basically there is no new strategy for independence, or for breaking up the UK, whatever way you would like to say it. So, if you're a supporter, and based on independence, and if we read Wings Over Scotland and all these pro independence blogs, and they're all like, what are we going to, how do we achieve advancing our aim? And there's nothing from them other than just the same thing. We've got a mandate. They're not even talking about de facto referendum anymore. That's not at all.
It's true, and also it's the same things they fall back on. So mandate. Well, we've won 8 elections in 8 years, right? Okay, so. We need the Section 30, so we'll be hoping that some Yousaf will get that from the UK Prime Minister, but he won't, though. Yeah, well, we're hoping he does, and if not, we'll look at other ways. And in any event, this Section 35, we've got to stand against that, because that's clearly a denial of Scottish democracy and a democratic effort. It's just the same stuff from 8 weeks ago.
I know, it's really rubbish. And then, of course, he got his first act was to get rid of Kate Forbes as well. So is that a good strategy or not? Revenge for the leadership debate? But should he have kept his enemy closer than a friend, as the expression goes?
Mark, sorry, before we get on to that, we've got one of our viewers is having trouble.
What's that?
Kevin Nicholson. He's saying, can someone help me from the page? I think he's having trouble with the comments. I'm not sure if there's any way. Kevin, it's very difficult to help you, I think, from here while we're on, but maybe afterwards, if you could maybe contact us and we can try and see what the problem might be.
Okay, that's good, because it's a bit difficult to do anything while the show's in progress.
Sorry about that.
We can view the comments and we can reply to them, actually, on air, and we can also reply to them in text, which we don't generally do. But we will have a look at that after the show. So a good strategy, David, or not?
I think a ridiculous strategy, to be honest. So who knows? I mean, who knows if he's actually got a strategic bone in his body, frankly. I think it's been very reactive, all the stuff he's done. You listen to anybody who is an observer, even on the SNP side, or say the Alba side, they're all saying, well, this is a massive mistake he's just made, because if you win an election with a very narrow majority, the first thing you do is you reach out to the people whom you've beaten, and you say, why don't you come in? Rather than that, he's just surrounded himself with yes men, frankly, his own supporters, people who sanctioned him and backed him and endorsed him, I should say. Is that a good strategy? I don't think it is, but I don't think he knows what a good strategy is.
I don't know. It's an either or. It really, it's what you do want to populate a cabinet with your own people. I mean, that's fair enough, and they did support him in the contest. Whereas Kate Forbes, as we saw earlier, it was I liked that. Something. Did you say apprentice, like an apprentice candidate? That was
exactly. That's what it was like. Exactly.
But we needed Alan Sugar to come in and tell them both they're fired.
Yeah.
That's what we needed.
If only.
There. Right, so media also are seeing him as an easy target. Let's have a look at this clip here from Conor Gillies.
The polls were suggesting throughout the contest that you...
I sorted this one as well.
Come on,
the
Conor.
three candidates were the most incompetent, weak and untrustworthy.
Well, that's enough. That's all we need to hear there. That's pretty much the whole clip. So I think he's not going to have an easy ride with the media as Sturgeon had. Now, we don't really know why Sturgeon had an
I think
easy ride.
they were scared of her, to be honest.
Well, she was very
I think she was quite shrill with them, so
very
very
condescending.
Short.
But nonetheless, well, maybe that was it.
And Humza, I don't think scares them.
Right.
Well, that's it. I mean, Sturgeon made them feel stupid because when they questioned her, she would ridicule them and she would just look down on them, and it made a lot of interviewers very, very reluctant to confront her. And it's only in the last maybe 6 months or so that firstly Kieran Jenkins and Peter Smith, guys like that, actually did stand up to her. And of course it culminated when she just didn't have an answer about the Isle of Bryson thing. Humza has got none of that gravitas that will prevent people having a real go at him, because he's seen as a bit of a clown, frankly. And if any interviewer senses weakness, they'll go for it. I guarantee you that. So no, he's not going to get an easy ride. He's going to get nothing like the easy ride that Sturgeon got. No chance. No,
absolutely not. I think there's definitely open seas, not in the SNP, in the media, certainly. And all these, plenty to talk about because of all these divisions that have been exposed. Now, one of the advantages of this, I have to put this down here, maybe further down, is that we don't have to ever listen to Ash Regan again. And her nutty ideas for independence thermometers, de facto referendums, and so on. She got 11% of the vote. Yeah. So what does that tell us for that hardcore independence vote? Does that mean that it's only 11% are really, really interested in independence going forward?
I think what it tells us, you asked about it earlier, why there were only 50,000 of the 70,000 people vote, probably because the rest of them thought, well, yeah, I want independence, but none of these Muppets are going to deliver it, so what's the point? They looked at Ash, who had, as she said, the only credible plan, not that it was credible in the slightest, but it was just getting laughed out of court, so there was no way she was going to win. So I think a lot of people thought it's probably not worth voting. And yeah, she got 11% of the vote, which probably means 11% of the SNP vote wants independence tomorrow, come what may. Yes. Very much in line with Alba. That's the same sort of thing. So Simon was asked today, would he invite Kate Forbes and Ash Regan to join Alba? And he said, sure. So
well, he needs that with doubly support, but yeah, this is the thing. They're starting from zero. I mean, does anyone? We'll talk about this later, actually, maybe if we have time. And does anyone really going to go to Alba after this debacle? Jump from the frying pan into the fire that's not actually lit. The ashes. Even from ashes to ashes, we could have made a good pun out of that. Yeah. All right. Anyway, coming up in a second, we're going to talk about the new cabinet. So, see you soon. Thank you very much for taking your time to come and spend an hour with us tonight. It's our pleasure to do the show for you, and hopefully we can discover new stuff together with your comments and so on. David, tell us a little bit more about the cabinet. Yeah, I'll pick out 2 or 3 people here. Shona Robison first. She's landed the role of Deputy First Minister and Finance Minister, which of course was John Swinney's dual role until very recently. Now, fascinating that she should be given this role. Humza has called her his best friend in the SNP. Interesting. She is, of course, Nicola Sturgeon's university friend, one of the many
along with Fiona Hislaw, who actually went to uni together with Sturgeon. And she's in the cabinet mainly because she's Sturgeon's friend, let's be honest. She was an absolute flop when she was the health secretary, and then she was the one who steered the gender recognition reform bill. So how on earth you could give someone with such a patchy record the finance role is frankly astonishing.
Well, it looks like she doesn't have any finance experience whatsoever.
I
think she did an arts degree.
Yeah, I mean, she's clearly no intellectual. I mean, let's not mince words here. She's very, very, very mediocre, I would say. So terribly disappointing appointment there. Jenny Go-Ruth, after making an absolute mess of transport, is now education and skills. My goodness, okay, that's interesting.
Right.
And you've got Mary McCallan, whom, as you know, I believe to be the anointed one, is now in the cabinet and looking after net zero and just transition, which is a pretty big role when you consider it's pretty much the cornerstone of SNP stroke green employment strategy, particularly up in the northeast. So that would be quite interesting. Also interesting to see that Shirley Ann Somerville has been moved on from education to social justice, and even more interesting that Angus Robertson, the grand old man, is staying exactly where he is on the Constitution, where he's been doing absolutely nothing and will continue to do absolutely nothing.
No, it's nonsense.
So, I mean, I've seen highly, highly unimpressive appointments, I would say. It's a very, very shallow talent reservoir indeed.
Well, does anyone have any experience outside of politics at all? I mean, that's a question.
Of these, looking down the list here,
the post that I'm most interested in is business. Now, that's a junior minister role, so we'll probably hear who's going to get business today. But that was filled by Ivan McKee, and he quit today because he was offered a role with less responsibility. But I think it might have had something to do with the fact that he was involved in Kate Forbes' campaign team. So this might be another revenge thing going on. I don't know. He was complaining. He said, everybody knows that the relationship with business needs to be reset. He says, if all I'm doing is listening to businesses venting their frustrations and I'm not able to actually have the tools to fix anything, then there's no point in me carrying on doing that. Which is, I mean, there's a few things about this. Number one, why is business a junior minister role? Why isn't it a economy and business a senior minister, a cabinet role? No, it's like an afterthought.
Well, they've never worked. None of them have worked in business. The best you get maybe is someone who's been a lawyer or something like that, like Sturgeon, and they don't have any idea how businesses work. They're having to make a payroll. If they want money, they ask Westminster for it, and they get money. Money comes through the tubes, right? Yeah. It's not like you have to go out and scrabble for it and do that. Although, in saying that, the SNP certainly has to do that now, considering the membership decline. So they might have to go out and scrabble a little bit more. But that's still running. That's Peter's job, or was Peter's job, not the job of these politicians. They don't know how to hire, how to fire, how to make money. It's just not.
Well, I mean, they have to be able to talk to businesses at their level. Right. I think if you're running a big business or a small business or a family business, whatever, and you've got someone coming in who doesn't know the first thing about business and has never worked in a business, then they don't have much credibility, do they? So Ivan today said that he was the only person, he directly said, I'm the only person in the SNP with any business experience.
Wow. Doesn't that tell you such a story that they're openly using phrases like that? My God, imagine the
attacking each other.
Exactly. That pervades the whole party right now. It's such an unhappy camp, clearly.
It's ridiculous. I mean, but then again, Ivan's been in the job, I think, for 5 years. So where was he with, the hospitality industry when they're crying out for help? Or, now we've got the DRS. I hope I've got the right D there. But we've got this DRS thing going on, which is, it's going to destroy the Scottish drinks industry and small retailers and so on.
Well, there's no one standing up for business in
the oil and gas industry.
No, there's no one standing up for business in there. They're not, because they're not interested. They're only interested in their twisted priorities, which now are basically the Greens' twisted priorities, which are to stop economic growth, whatever way they can. To make the rest of us feel guilty about of economic growth. That's the thing. We're not allowed to use our resources. Remember, for so long, it was all about it's our oil, and we're going to get rich off the oil. All abandoned.
You can't talk about oil
because of the Greens. They can't abandon that. Yeah. It's ridiculous. Now, I think I noticed someone calculated this there. First Minister's salary £165,676, higher even than the UK Prime Minister's salary, as we all know. But 9 cabinet ministers, all being paid £118,510. So over £1 million, £1.2 million being spent on this charade. Now, that's where the T-shirt comes in. Although that T-shirt comes in. Perhaps we should consider saving all that money. That's just the beginning of it. That's not even anywhere near the 700 million it costs every
year.
Every year. So
okay,
we can move on from that. We're going to come back in a moment with some indications on where this all leaves the movement, the SNP movement that ain't moving. But first, if you like what we do, can you please consider donating to the majority? We work every day to help amplify your voice on social media and on the show like here. So if you donate, you can go to our website, just straightforward, just type in the Majority Scotland in Google, up it comes. And please choose a monthly or one-time donation if you can afford it. Everything helps, and we will be back in just a second. Okay, so where does this leave the movement? On your behalf, we keep tabs on nationalist commentators who are going through the cycle of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, and in many cases, all at once.
I think they go through them every day.
Yeah. It's really bad. It's really shocking at the moment. So, pick out a couple here that we've seen. Wings Over Scotland. What have we got here? Wings Over Scotland, number one. Ash Regan, supporter. He was feeding her lines through her earpiece. No, I don't know, but metaphorically. Says, as for the party itself, all USAF offers is managed decline. Its support and support for independence will fall. Any chance of Scotland extracting itself from the UK in the next decade is dead. And he goes on in the same message to say, asking people to support him for the next 8 years because the grift will go on. And this is a guy who thinks he's cleverer than everyone else. And now he said this when Ash is beat quite substantially as well, 11%. Then that's going to be what's the word? A self-reckoning or something like that, right?
Prophecy.
Well, self-fulfilling, not self-fulfilling prophecies. I mean, you have to
karma.
You have to. Well, karma. That's good. Yeah, but you have to. It has to have some self-reflection, right? Where are you going? Okay, now
I come up and.
Yeah. Next, we had Scott Goes Pop. Now, remember, I don't know if you know this guy, but a few weeks ago he was all excited because. He was saying there were 54% for independence. He ran this poll, right? And we're still working with the pollster to try and find out what was behind that because it was such an outlier. But anyway, he says, from a personal point of view, how do I contribute in this impossible situation? I can't, in all good conscience, cheerlead for an SNP that I now realise needs to fail at least some extent before it can succeed by being shocked into ditching USAF. And this seems to be a theme amongst them at the moment, where they think that the SNP has to be destroyed to get independence.
Sorry, say that again.
The SNP has to be destroyed.
Yep.
So that they can get independence. It has to be rebuilt. Burn the village to save the village. Type thing.
Simon made a similar point today. He said more people now proportionally are voting for saying that they will back independence than are actually saying they will vote SNP. So they're obviously pushing this line very hard. They're trying to push this line.
Okay.
The independence movement is no longer just about the SNP. Interesting.
Yes. Well, they've been trying that. They've been trying that for a long time. But without the SNP, can the independence movement survive? I mean, it seems highly unlikely, doesn't it?
Well, what would we be left with if we get rid of the SNP? We've got Alba.
Yes.
And the Greens?
Yeah.
Yes.
God help us.
About 5% of the vote. I mean, you would be kidding. It would be great if they didn't. What we want is for the SNP to implode and for the SNP to be broken into a million pieces, as Kennedy said he would do with the CIA. That's exactly what we need, because they're still getting 40 to 45% of the vote. And the problem is, if we had an election tomorrow, they'd get about 40% of the vote then as well. And that's more than enough to win again, and that's what we've got to change. So if these guys think the answer is to break the SNP apart, have at it, guys. Please do.
Yeah, I mean, we always talked about the problem on our side was that the vote was split.
Yes.
3 ways between Conservatives, well, really 2 ways between the Tories and Labour. Now we're seeing the prospect of the SNP vote being split. But also, more than that, we're seeing the prospect of people returning to Labour. Why go through all this? This is the thing. Why go through all this bother? And let's have a listen to this guy who basically expresses it perfectly. Oh, where's the sound?
Where's the sound?
Oh, there's no sound on it.
No.
That's pretty weird. Oh, okay.
We can read it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know what happened there. Should check the sound.
Would you like me to do the voiceover?
Oh yeah, can you do that? That's good. Right. Okay. Here we go. Right, here we go.
I've been voting SNP all my life, right? But see, the next time, I don't think I'm voting for the SNP. I'm going to vote for Labour. But they're against independence. Yeah, but Labour are going to get rid of the Tories.
Right.
That is the crux of the whole matter for the next UK general election. And this is the point we have to make. The last 4 UK general elections, Scotland has voted in droves for the SNP. And every time a Conservative government has been returned. If you want to carry on with Conservative governments, SNP voters, keep voting SNP, because I guarantee that's what you'll get. The gap between Labour and Conservative is far closer in the UK and will become even closer still between now and the calling of the general election. So this is a truth that SNP voters simply have to grasp. They have to realise and decide, what do we want more? Tories out or some spurious gesture saying that we like SNP representatives in London, because they're going to have to make their minds up. They can't get the Conservative Party out by voting SNP. It can't happen. It's not going to happen. So it really is up to them.
Okay, but is this Guy here who says we cannot vote for Labour as Starmer has promised to devolve more powers to Scotland, exactly what we don't need or want.
That's actually not quite correct. It's not in Starmer's and Gordon Brown's last review, the stuff that was about Scotland was actually very sparse. Really, it was about getting some seats in this new, what was it called, Senate of the Nations or something like that, which wouldn't be any different from give them any more powers than they have now. It was actually, I think, and one of the things I'd been talking with some Labour people, insiders, and they said that they had basically managed to turn it around a little bit so that most of the devolution that was talked about in Gordon Brown's plan proposal was actually going to happen in England. And it was mainly in the form of giving more power to city mayors and so on. So very little about that in Scotland. Now, there should be more devolution in Scotland to local authorities.
Exactly, to councils.
Right, to councils. So that is a thing, of course, Labour has said they would do and would be strong. And, of course, any money that goes directly from Westminster or London government to local authorities bypassing the Scottish Parliament is a plus. In fact, if all of it could bypass it, then what would be the need for the Scottish Parliament? So perhaps...
Well, I'm sure the councils could do with the £700 million that's going to cost next year to run the Scottish Parliament.
Yes, well, exactly. It's really ridiculous.
700 million.
Yes. So let's see where we're at. Yes, so that's the answer to that question. Their devolution hasn't worked now, nor never will. There'll be an ongoing discussion over the next few months, certainly from our side, to say, well, first of all, many people on our side did not want devolution in the first place. Yep. And then secondly, after this disaster and the ongoing disasters and the incredible expense, waste, scandal, and so on, is it really something that we should continue with? And I think when you look at you just look at the amount of waste on these ferries, for example. If those ferries had been procured through Westminster, they would have been done already. Indeed. Just for example.
We wouldn't even have heard about them. They'd just be sailing around and nobody would be even talking or thinking about them.
Yeah, because they've got a competent civil service and political structure, irrespective of which party is actually in place. Quite. And not a bunch of no-hopers who are wanting to sign papers just because they've got an election coming up or a referendum coming up, something like that. So, no, that's, there's going to be quite a lot more discussion about that. From my mind, I say, okay, we can talk about reform, fair enough. But as part of reform, you also want to say, okay, is it actually should you just not actually get rid of it anyway? We're reforming it, make it any better, and that is an open discussion that we need to have going forward.
They should have built in a review period. I mean, when you in business, certainly, whenever you install something new or you have some radical reform or whatever, then you usually have a review period after a certain length of time, and you ask the question, "How is this working for us? Are we better off than we were before? What's working? What's not working?"
Well, in fact,
why can't we have that?
They did the opposite in the Smith Commission review. They basically appeased the nationalists even more by saying we'll give them more power so that by giving them powers they'll behave better. In fact, of course, they behaved worse. And the big problem with the whole thing is they're using all the power of government, all the money of government to advance their cause. It's not just about the 20 million that they're spending on a legal case for referendum and these little bits here and there. It's not about that. It's that they're ploughing money into institutions that are whether it's the judiciary or the police or the third sector. They're putting money into those and paying all their people there so that they will vote for them and they will be part of this scheme. And that is not what the government should be about.
Certainly not. You're
certainly not. Okay, I'm trying to find out where we are. So, that guy said he switched to Labour, but you can really imagine being an ex-Labour voter who switched to the SNP only to now realise that the party is 48% Tartan Tories.
Absolutely.
That is not a good scene.
And that's 48% of the members. We know that the voters themselves, who aren't members, were even more in favour of Kate Forbes than the members. So, absolutely, this has been a disastrous time. A cataclysmic time for the SNP. The whole thing in the lead up, the GRR bill, Sturgeon's lengthy departure, and now this appalling campaign and the outcome of it. This has really hit the cause of independence very hard. So it's great to see Wings and these guys talking this way because they're right. There is no path. It's never been further away since at least the referendum was called. It is further away now than it's been.
And the thing is, they like to blame. They'll go, "Oh, it's Nicola Sturgeon's fault. She never took us to independence." No, mate, it's your fault for letting her, fool you that there was actually a possibility that it could happen. Right. That's the thing. They need this time of self-reflection, and they need to say what their part in it was. Yeah. And they if you vote for nationalists, to get this one go, and then they don't do anything about services and they don't do any other stuff at all, and they get involved with the Greens and all that. That's what you voted for.
Exactly right.
So, now some people might say that we shouldn't gloat. But I personally don't have any pity for them, really, at this stage anyway. They've spent years trying to break up the country and in doing so destroyed their public services. And they were so smug, self-satisfied and self-righteous with their greed and division while they did it. They're like, we're great, noble people trying to break up the UK. They're like, no, you're not. You never were. And also, what's worse is because they did it against the wishes, for the past 8 years, against the wishes of the majority of Scots. That's anti-democratic while they're at it. So, it says here, they can cry for eternity as far as we're concerned. But if they move on, not always forgiven.
I've got to say thank you to Jim Slater, who said he wishes BBC or STV would interview me. I wish so too.
Yes, well, take a while there.
Thank you, Jim.
Right, okay, so thanks for that bit of a rant there. Things you can do to support the show. You can make a donation to the majority. Thank you very much if you do. You can buy a T-shirt or a mug. Well, we've still got these Design Sturgeon mugs. A few of them left. So buy them, a collector's item. You'll be on the Antiques Roadshow in 50 years. Oh, and you'll be like, oh yes, this is worth £20,000. Rare, very rare event. But people will be saying, who's Sturgeon? Anyway, you can subscribe to the show.
It'll be an obscure question in the history books, yeah.
And you can, of course, tell your friends about us, and you can do all of the above, which will make us extremely happy. So please make me happy, make Mary happy, make David happy. Subscribe to the show if you can. As always, we have a good time in the show with you because we're cheery and we're in a good situation at the moment. With Scotland under Humza Yousaf may be a disaster, but we know that the time of toxic nationalism will eventually come to an end.
We're getting some product ideas from the viewers. How about
are we?
Humza resign mugs?
Oh yes,
Yes.
of course. Well, the thing
They'll
is,
be coming soon.
The thing is, we had a discussion about this on Twitter, and it's like, should it actually be stay Humza because we want him to stay?
Yeah.
Right. So maybe we should. It's
Couldn't be better for
do
us.
both.
Mm.
Right. So depending what your mood is,
Humza stay. We'll do the Humza stay mug.
that's it. So we can do that.
Alan Cameron, do we think there's more dodgy stuff to come out now we Cranky is gone? Absolutely.
It's not started yet.
Exactly. There's going to be an awful lot of stuff coming out, and very, very damaging to the cause.
Well, anyone who is loyal to Kate Forbes is going to obviously, try and stick the knife in whatever way they can. Really. So I will buy a Humza mug. Oh, okay. There we go. That's it. Deal then. So, but yeah, people are going to, they want the revenge, right? Because it's not just that Kate Forbes didn't get elected; they didn't get their jobs as well, right?
True.
Her cabinet and so on.
Tommy thinks that Humza will be gone before the mugs are even made.
Well, unless we could, Humza is a mug, perhaps. Jokes. Anyway, we're moving on. It's the highlight of the week. It is Zoomer of the week.
Yay.
Actually, I've got a T-shirt design that's "You're my favourite Zoomer," so you might like that one. So it's coming up soon on the Majority Show shop. All right, it's Amer Anwar, who is, some of you may know, as a lawyer. I'm a bit of an ambulance chaser in Glasgow, and he's always involved in these kind of woke causes.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Let's go.
You okay?
Carry on.
You're right. Okay. Anyway, he was on the telly the other day, and he was defending what's his name, Humza Yousaf. And let's see what he said here. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Okay. Let's see.
Where Humza Yousaf's victory makes him the first Muslim leader of a political party anywhere in the UK. To discuss that milestone and the challenges facing the new SNP leader, I'm joined by Anwar, a lawyer, campaigner and friend of Humza Yousaf, and Assa Samake Ramon, who writes a column for the independent supporting newspaper, The National. Anwar, let me start with you, because he's actually the first Muslim national leader in a Western democracy anywhere, which must be a proud moment.
It's an extremely proud moment for Scotland, for Europe. It would be inconceivable for our parents' generation to have thought that an Asian and a Muslim would one day become the First Minister. And I think also on the issue of race, I think what it points out is that there is a stark difference between the civic nationalism of Humza Yousaf's SNP and the British nationalism of Rishi Sunak's Conservative Party. One is progressive values that welcomes all communities, and the other, the latter, of course, is one that gives us a climate of fear and gives us deportations to Rwanda.
Oh, I mean, so much to say about this. It's like he picked up some kind of book that says, okay, what is the daftest nationalist arguments that have already been stamped into the ground by the majority many, many times. So, there is no such thing as civic nationalism.
No, there isn't.
It really isn't. Every single nationalism ever is based on division, grievance, greed, and a smug superiority you see in this clip. I mean, just think about it, what he said. He says that our nationalism is better than their nationalism.
Of course, he's not a nationalist, Mark. I'm not a nationalist.
No, it's like, and it's absolutely ridiculous. It's that thing we had. I remember a long time ago, Patrick Harvey said the same thing.
Yes.
Our Scottish nationalism was welcoming, civic, and progressive, and their nationalism compared with the nationalism down south. You're comparing two nationalisms. You're saying you're superior to someone else. That means you're a nationalist.
Our racism is better than their racism.
It's utter nonsense
And
as well.
Going back to this British nationalism thing, there is no such thing as British nationalism unless you count the British National Party. I'll give you that. There may be British nationalists, just like the Scottish nationalists. Scottish National Party are Scottish nationalists. Yeah, okay, I'll draw that equivalent there. Absolutely right. I'll give you that. Indeed, yeah. I'm not in the BNP, guys. Neither is anybody I know, so I don't know who it is you're referring to when you claim that.
Oh, it's ridiculous. It's like really, civic, we said this before, like saying you're a civic racist.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's the same thing. Absolutely ridiculous. And so, how stupid do you have to be to say you're not a nationalist, but your nationalism is better than someone else? So that's why, though, our work continues to make a better Scotland without nationalism, without this type of smug superiority that we are somehow better than they are. I mean, imagine it. We Scots elected Humza Yousaf as the leader, and they're trying to say that we're better than them. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Be serious. Anyway, ran over. Okay, moving on. It's going to be David here. Okay, so let's go.
Right. My nomination for Zoomer of the Week this week is ex-UK Foreign Office diplomat turned fanatical Scottish nationalist supporter and ultra-conspiracy theorist, Craig Murray. Now, Craig
That's
Murray,
a lot. That's he's got a lot of titles there, hasn't he?
Big build up there for Craig, and he deserves it indeed.
And then it's
Exactly. Now, Craig is an English ex-Foreign Office diplomat who apparently thinks that Scotland must be free and all this nonsense, and he uses all these crazy terms every week. This is despite the fact that the Sturgeon administration was behind his prosecution and jailing after he used what they call jigsaw identification to reveal too many details of one of Alex Salmond's accusers, if you remember. So he actually served a jail sentence because of that. Nonetheless, he's still fanatically pro-SNP, and every day he tweets something to try and crank up the anti-English sentiment in Scotland. So today was no different. He told his Twitter followers today that he was unable to watch live coverage of the Scotland national team beating Spain last night as it wasn't on TV. And he went on to complain that he could, however, have watched live coverage of the England under-21s playing Ukraine, although he lives in Scotland. And the Craig's summary of this episode was, welcome to life in a colony. Right, okay, so quite a lot to unpack. First off, guys, the Scotland-Spain game.
You've won already. I don't even
Thank you. So just to explain for those of you who maybe don't watch football, Scotland versus Spain was indeed on broadcast on live TV in Scotland last night, as I watched it in my bedroom, right in there. Now he could have watched it also. Craig could have watched it also if he'd paid. I think
that's a nice offer.
Exactly. You get loads of room, Craig. It's a lovely room. He could have watched it on his own TV in his own house had he paid the £100 per year, which they charge for streaming of live sport. And they show a lot of good sport, Scottish Cup matches, Scottish League Cup matches, rugby matches. It's a terrific channel. Now, interestingly, also the channel is called Viaplay, and it's Swedish. So what happens in a situation like this is the Scottish Football Association, which is the body that runs the national game, has broadcasting rights to Scotland's games. They sell those rights to whichever broadcaster they please. It has nothing to do with England. It has nothing to do with the UK government. It's purely a commercial transaction. So the Scottish Football Association sold the rights of last night's game to a Swedish channel who then broadcast it. That's it. That's all that happened. But according to Craig, this means we live in a colony. So as always, it's just separatist bleating based on nothing but pure ignorance. Now, it just so happens that it was a Swedish channel that won the bid, but he's now talking about colonies and Scotland being colonised. So do you think we've been colonised by Vikings, for goodness sake? Because the Swedish channel, so they get utter nonsense. So for spreading fictitious separatist lies in a transparent attempt to foster yet more grievance, my nomination for Zoomer is the increasingly unhinged Craig Murray.
Oh, that's very good. Craig is
someone says there's no such thing as free TV. I mean, the BBC isn't free.
Quite.
We all have to pay our license fees.
We have to pay a license fee even though we don't even watch the BBC.
You know, all the ITV and everything, that's not free because, you know, they have to raise their... Well, we can watch it, but we're compelled to watch adverts for increasingly long lengths of time, it seems.
Yes.
Like 7 minutes of adverts.
Netflix, what have you, right?
Well, of course, you have to pay for all your subscriptions, and the biggest subscription we have is to Sky for Formula One.
There you go.
We like to watch Formula One. It's the only live TV that we need.
Yeah.
And for that, we have to pay a BBC license, and we have to pay a
that's a bit punitive, a bit punitive, isn't it? Really, yeah.
So I don't know what kind of world he lives in, where he thinks that you're going to get, free football.
Well, actually, this is a point. This was the Greens came out with this the other day. They were saying that all Scotland international football matches should be free on on the TV.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, fine, but that's fine. I don't watch football, though. Why am I paying for it? That's that's the thing. It's not a cultural thing.
taxpayers would have to
It's
pay.
not like every single person in Scotland watches the football.
What about the rugby?
Yeah, exactly. Then where does it end? It's every single thing.
The
free.
caber tossing
when Andy
international
Murray is on Wimbledon, those matches are free, but the other ones aren't free. I mean, where does it end?
Highland Games would be compulsory.
You're on a roll there, Mary.
Yes, I'm trying to think of all that.
Curling, of course, yes.
Very good. Right. Okay. So, yes. Wrap up your thing. Did you wrap it up already?
Yeah, he's right. I think he's wrapped up. Yeah, he's all done.
Right. Okay. Right. So that's Craig Murray. Definitely always in Zoomer territory. All right. Right, Mary, you're up.
Okay, so this week I actually have two Zoomers. And the reason I have two is because they're working together. It's a conspiracy. And they're working together to get rid of the M8 in Glasgow. I mean, this is nuts. So these two people are Glasgow councillors. One is for the Greens, that's Christy Mearns.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. And the other is the SNP councillor, Angus Miller. So Christy, what she's thought up is that she wants to cut the speed of the M8 motorway going through the busiest sections of Glasgow, and she wants to cut the speed down to 30 miles an hour.
Stop it.
And so next week she is going to ask the Scottish Transport Minister, whoever that's going to be, she wants to have a 6-month trial on this. And she also wants to extend the LEZ, the low emission zones, to include the motorways. And she wants to commission a report because that costs money, and we can spend money on that, on the air quality along the motorway.
Right, is that for all the people who walk up and down the motorway? Right, okay.
There's nothing next to the motorway. People don't live next to it. It's especially the northern section, which is the section they're talking about.
Well,
the city.
It means then that if you're driving along the M8, as soon as if she gets what she wants, you're driving along the M8, say you're coming from Edinburgh, you're going through Glasgow, you're on your way to the West Coast. You're going to visit David Griffiths watching football on the telly. That once you got to Glasgow, then you would be in the LEZ zone. And so all the cars, like our car that doesn't qualify for the LEZ zones, we wouldn't be able to use the M8 to go through Glasgow, maybe get to the West Coast or wherever we're going.
We would actually end up going through the city.
Yeah.
Right, no, we can't go through the city.
No, go through the south side, maybe through. Well, there's a lot more people and a lot more.
We've gone twice the distance, half the speed. So we'll probably used, more gas or petrol than we would have used.
And you actually would be going past people's houses that way also.
Yeah, of course. It's utter nonsense. People would just find their way around.
And just this driving through the centre of Glasgow at 30 miles an hour. Now, to be honest, a lot of the times the traffic is backed up, so it's going slower than 30 miles an hour anyway. But if you did have a clear road, say you were travelling maybe at, say, 9 o'clock at night or something, and you're on your way home after your shift or something like that, you'd have to take it to a crawl at 30 miles an hour on a motorway.
Honestly.
It's absolutely ridiculous. But listen, I haven't mentioned the second Zoomer who's working with her. And that's Angus Miller. So he plans to lodge an amendment to the motion because he wants to add something onto it. Right, you ready? He's calling for the city centre stretch of the M8, the same one we're talking about, to be re-engineered or downgraded in the long term and replaced with an avenue or a boulevard-style road. So the motorway would stop, I guess, and then it would become a boulevard.
Well, they had some idea.
Isn't that very European?
They had some idea to cover it, I think, when it goes through the city centre, Charing Cross, which isn't such a bad idea.
I don't have anything against that whatsoever.
But you see what actually would happen. They would just build buildings on top of it, right?
Yeah, quite.
And sell it to developers. That's what would actually happen.
Most likely.
Let's assume that they get it as a park. Okay, we can say fine, just for that section. That's not that doesn't affect the people underneath. You don't need to go any slower than that. There's no issue there. But the problem with it is it costs £100 million or something to do that. And are you going to spend £100 million on that? Or are you going to spend it on libraries? Right? I mean, this is the thing.
Or something else that's for the public good.
Well, the things that are actually being cut, the teacher salaries and so on. So it's one of these completely pie in the sky things. You look at places like Boston and talk about the big dig. It costs billions and billions and billions of pounds to put that motorway under the city, and
It's
it
a much
took
bigger
20
city.
years.
It's a much bigger city.
So it's not the same thing at all. And I think a lot of it is like going to the past and saying, look, it's not great that that the motorway was built in some areas of Glasgow were demolished because of it. But now, because it does exist, it's an amazing resource for people to get into the city. So at least let it be used for what it's supposed to be used for.
Of course.
Anyway, I'm supposed to decide, and I'm just going to decide for Craig.
It's like that, is it? Okay.
I mean, they are nutters. They're nutters, but they're not that. They don't have much of an audience, to be honest, right? Do they?
Well,
Yeah.
you mean the
People-
SNP and the Greens and
Yeah,
Glasgow
no,
City
well,
Council? This is the kind of nonsense that might just get through.
Yeah, true.
It seems unlikely, but you never know. You have to be vigilant. Otherwise, we say, all along, they would roll over us. Right. So.
Right, so we'll put the Zoomer of the week is Craig Mad.
Ready?
There. David, well done. Right, what have we got here?
Okay.
Well, okay, thank you for being on the show with us tonight. And thank you for all your comments. I'll leave you with the thought of the week, and it's a short one. Does anyone seriously think that Humza Yousaf can lead Scotland to independence? Nope. UK is safe for now, but our fight continues. We're so glad to have you with us tonight. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your comments. Good night.
Good night, everyone. Thanks a lot for all the comments. Fantastic as always. Well done, guys.
See you soon.